Redbox started in 2002, not as an automated DVD rental company, but as an experiment from the fast food giant McDonald's. They were exploring the idea of introducing more automation, believing in research that suggested consumers were more interested in automated convenience over traditional methods of purchasing goods. Convenience and movie rental stores were the two sub-industries McDonald's chose to focus on, and by late 2002, they had created Redbox Automated Retail LLC. And with this, they opened a few test locations. TikTok Easy Shop was the name chosen for these kiosks, many of which were massive units that stored various small items that could be found at the average convenience store. The comparatively smaller DVD kiosk was painted red and could be found adjacent to the TikTok, or by itself at McDonald's locations. However, by the following year, McDonald's decided to pull the plug on these machines, as they just weren't generating profit for the company. The DVD side of the business, however, was still a point of interest for McDonald's, and the economics as well as the value proposition for the consumer made more sense. Redbox was now being tested once again in 2004, and it really was a competitive idea. This was of course a time before online streaming, and video rental stores like Blockbuster were king. But renting a movie from Blockbuster was a separate trip, and the rental itself was around $5 for new releases, and the company was infamously known for their late fees. Redbox, on the other hand, was going to massively shake that up, offering movies for just $1 a day. These kiosks would be packed with over 150 titles to choose from, and would be placed in locations people would already be making a trip to. Think of a grocery store or a restaurant, which from there, you could just stop by a Redbox after picking up dinner and be on your way. Plus, you wouldn't have to return it to the same place. You can visit any Redbox location and make the return. The idea certainly had legs, and after being trialed and successfully implemented in various locations, including their parent company McDonald's, Redbox was acquired by a new owner, Coinstar. They would purchase a minority stake in the company in 2005 for $32 million, then buying the company outright from McDonald's by 2009 for around $170 million more. Coinstar was a sensible owner, as they knew the kiosk market and how to expand. DVD rentals through this time were also expanding, eating up the remaining market share Blockbuster was leaving behind as their company began to collapse. As their stores closed, Redbox kiosks were popping up everywhere, now building out a network of over 13,000 locations. They took up residence in supermarkets, drugstores, dollar stores, and more. Unlike the brick-and-mortar Blockbuster or the monthly subscriptions of Netflix, Redbox would be targeting consumers who were more cost-conscious and focused on areas of the United States that had less access to the internet. It became natural for people to stop by a Redbox on their way home, and the kiosks were turning out to be a big hit, sometimes even seeing lines building out front. As more locations opened up, Redbox began introducing video games alongside Blu-rays, an expansion to their overall catalog on offer. The company had now crossed its 1 billionth rental across their now 24,000 kiosks, a monumental rise since their introduction just 6 years earlier. Business was good, and despite a few road bumps like the concerns from larger movie studios, the company navigated through these times more or less with grace, continuing their expansion efforts and cultivating a friendly and open corporate culture, one which was praised by employees.
My name is Brian Sharp, and I was the director of field operations for Redbox. Yeah, so there were a lot of great things about Redbox, but the corporate culture, just the way that everybody was. We took our business seriously, creative, scrappy, but we didn't really take ourselves that seriously. Just an enjoyable place to work, an encouraging place to work, a place of growth, a place of development. That was part of our culture.
Their dominance in this particular market was becoming more apparent, as by 2012, they had purchased Blockbuster Express, Blockbuster's almost carbon copy competitor to Redbox. This was also around when the company peaked in their overall annual rentals, at 770 million discs. It was certainly an impressive number, and that also meant that the company made up half of the physical media rental market across the country. By 2013, they would also report their highest annual revenue to date at $1.97 billion for the year.
It was just nonstop growth and nonstop optimism. We were valuable out in the rural areas, but again, I live in Houston, which is a massive metropolitan area, and there would be Right here in the little community that I live in, there were 13 red boxes within 3 square miles, and they all were movers and shakers. So it was just constant growth and constant. That's how you get to dang near $2 billion in a year, is because you get these big national chains that have adopted you.
That incredible revenue growth and market share, however, was only going to dwindle from there. By this point, consumers were gravitating more towards online streaming. As a result, annual rentals did decline and would continue to over the years to come. Many kiosks, however, were still profitable, and the company as a whole was healthy. By 2016, Coinstar, which had now restructured to become Outerwall, the parent company to Redbox, agreed to sell the entire company to the private equity firm Apollo Global Management. Apollo is an incredibly large investment firm which has invested in brands like AMC, Norwegian Cruise Line, Yahoo, and a bunch of lesser-known companies, creating a truly massive portfolio. Outerwall, and by extension Redbox, was their entry into the kiosk-based consumer goods and services market, trying to get a foothold of the merchandise machines and kiosks often found on the outer walls of an established store, hence the name Outer Walls. A new CEO was brought in to Redbox to lead the company, which had now expanded to over 40,000 kiosks across the United States. By this point, most Americans lived within a 5-minute drive from a Redbox, a truly astonishing presence across the country. Apollo actually played a more hands-off role with the brand, not making many changes and allowing leadership to guide Redbox into the future through whatever avenue they saw fit. One of those avenues was a transition to become their own entertainment company. Netflix, after all, started out distributing third-party content and grew that side of their business to ultimately fund and create their own original content. So why couldn't Redbox? Well, in 2017, they rolled out an online, on-demand streaming service while also forming an entertainment division led by a former Lionsgate executive. They then purchased the distribution rights to the 2019 Bob Saget-directed film Benjamin, which nobody saw. In fact, most of the film and television Redbox would help fund and distribute, some like The Fanatic starring John Travolta, were massive flops. The Fanatic in particular made just $3,150 at the box office. Really, this whole entertainment division of the company became a huge money pit, and siphoned off cash away from their core business. Which, by the way, executives were now considering their entertainment division a part of their core business. But the DVD rental side was also hurting, thanks to an overall decline in DVD usage around America, and really the whole world. The company's revenue fell significantly year over year, now to around half of what they just made 6 years prior. By 2020, though, the pandemic brought a weird era of people looking to do stuff, and rentals actually shot up for Redbox. However, the movies they were renting began to dry up, as new content was often sent directly to streaming rather than physically released, therefore removing the incentive for people to even stop by a kiosk. But despite all of that hardship, Redbox wasn't bleeding money like you might think. Their DVD rental business was taking losses in some markets, but keeping steady in others. The value proposition was still there. It's cheap rentals in convenient locations, the most economic way for people to rent recent movie releases for the lowest price. So the company was still seeing strong sales, especially when movie studios began releasing content again. The brand, however, was acquired by Seaport Global Acquisition, basically another investment firm looking to take private companies public. And that's exactly what they did with Redbox, seeing an IPO in October of 2021. While they had a strong start, their stock quickly tumbled to just under $2 by 2022, from a high of $15 back in November the year prior. Redbox ended 2021 with $288 million in revenue, but lost over $112 million, with significant year-over-year losses. Redbox, for their part, stated that the losses were directly attributed from COVID, and that the company had a plan to ramp up revenue to over the $1 billion mark by the year 2023, mostly marketing their digital ambitions. But the company was once again thrown a curveball, as Redbox was yet again purchased by a new entity. Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment was a company formed around the popular inspirational books of the same name. The corporation expanded well beyond the books, though, and into consumer products as well as smaller entertainment companies, notably the streaming service Crackle and the indie film distributor 1091. Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment, or CSSE, would acquire Redbox for $375 million in August of 2022. The company would be delisted from the stock market after only being traded for a mere 8 months, which in that period of time lost more than half of its value in its stock price. CSSE, however, wasn't exactly on the right track either. The company had consistently lost money for the last few years prior to the acquisition, and their immediate ideas for Redbox were a little strange, like forming a partnership with TikTok to show their content above select kiosks. Not sure what value this brought to the brand, but I suppose it was a fitting brand to once again display on the kiosks, considering the original name. But while the parent company was sinking further into debt, Redbox employees were committed to trying to save the brand and boost the sides of the business which were actually making money. While renting DVDs was on a downward trend, it was only losing them a rather small percentage each quarter. By comparison, the company's service division was actually generating profit. Certain Redbox executives began to focus on that, signing more contracts with third-party vendors for Redbox to both establish other brands' entry into the kiosk market, as well as sign contracts to utilize their large network of technicians and merchandise fulfillment teams. CSSE, however, was continuing to post losses, and their CEO, William Rohana, to some, wasn't seeming to be all that engaged in trying to save the company. By the end of 2022, CSSE posted a staggering $111 million loss. The market was also reacting accordingly to these catastrophic reports, with their stock going from a high of $12 a share in August of 2022 to less than $1 a year later. With so much cash coming out the door and a stock price about to reach rock bottom, bankruptcy seemed to have been inevitable. The company posted a $636 million loss for 2023. Clearly, things inside the company were in dire conditions, as Redbox saw employees' wages deferred. Kiosk machines, which required service for general upkeep, had their part orders canceled. This was despite Redbox actually seeing an uptick in revenue and rentals. Remember, the kiosks were still generating revenue, and the value proposition was continuing to remain strong for consumers. But the company was seeing little to no investment from the struggling parent corporation, and regardless of how beneficial Redbox was to the company as a whole, it still seemed like it was all over. After firing the entire board of directors, Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection on June 29, 2024. The company stated that they were in over $970 million in debt.
There were a lot of things leading up to it. Nobody was particularly delusional. Everybody knew that we were kind of living on the edge. It's difficult when you're the face of leadership and you don't know and you don't have answers. And I personally had 650 people that were looking to me like, what's going on, man? And to have to answer, honestly, don't know. I get the same emails you do, right? That's really a frustrating place to be in. It was scary, but this whole time, again, I'm surrounded by intelligent people. Our director of business development, right in the middle of all of this, calls me one day and says, "Brian, I'm not even casting a net and fish are just jumping in the boat." And he's just talking about new clients that are just coming for us because we're so good at what we do. Meanwhile, the house is on fire around us.
While employees at Redbox had hoped that the entire company, or at the very least the service side of the brand, would be spun off, as both arguably had good propositions to other companies as a separate entity, CSSE ultimately went a different route. On July 10th, 2024, the company's bankruptcy was converted to Chapter 7, meaning all assets across all subsidiary brands at CSSE would be liquidated, including all of Redbox. Revealed in the bankruptcy filing, it was alleged that funds intentionally deducted from employees' payroll intended to fund their healthcare was massively mismanaged.
And so there were people on our team that have these chronic health conditions or maintenance that they have to do every month. And because the bills weren't getting paid, their doctors, their providers started dropping them. And I know of at least one employee that had, I believe it was a heart surgery, and that's a $230,000 bill that he's on the hook for now. It was a rough time.
No formal guilty verdict had been dealt, and at this point there has been no litigation stemming from these claims. However, the bankruptcy judge presiding over the case called it, quote, incredibly disturbing, going on to say, quote, "I find it sickening, frankly. This was all on top of the existing allegations from one of the company's lenders that CSSE was more broadly mismanaged. Whatever the case may be, Redbox's future was now at an end. Kiosks around America were pulled from stores, and at this point faced an uncertain future. It's most likely that pretty much all of them will just be destroyed. Though weeks after Chapter 7, I made a trip out to several locations, and not only were they active, but they were functional, even taking my credit card and delivering me quality entertainment. Though I can't imagine this will remain for much longer. The legacy Redbox leaves behind, in my opinion, is one of frustration. The brand started out as a really good idea with fantastic implementation, which saw them grow a cherished corporate culture and a fantastic competitive consumer product. One which has stood the test of time, despite technology advancing tremendously fast, which is very impressive. They also sort of just got lucky on that aspect, as it certainly wasn't for a lack of attempts to diversify and attack the same digital markets, though all attempts failed. Regardless, they had a strong brand, a massive presence across the United States, and an endless stream of content. Well, for the latter part, they did until they didn't. COVID certainly put a damper on their operations and severely wounded them. The company would ultimately find themselves acquired by an unlikely parent company, one which had a much grander vision. According to CSSE's CEO William Rohana, the strategy was to buy Redbox and use it as a revenue center to help fund their ambitions of building a streaming network, much like Netflix did years prior. But to do this, they saddled the company with nearly $400 million in debt just to acquire Redbox, plus taking on all of Redbox's existing debt. And in reality, it didn't seem like their new parent company was fully able to leverage the brand's strengths like many had hoped. CSSE had their own problems stemming from COVID, and everyone was losing money, a lot of money. That paired with the various lawsuits Redbox was already dealing with, mainly due to the company failing to pay them, well, that just caused several other large retailers to discontinue their relationship with Redbox. It became a vicious cycle from that point of debt and mismanagement, with high-level executives failing to allow Redbox to make adjustments to their operations and make themselves more profitable. But it seems like it wouldn't have even mattered, as the massive debt from the rest of the company was dragging down every other subsidiary and burning down everything those brands built. And Redbox was a valuable company. It provided a relevant service to many, a testament to the hundreds of thousands of rentals every month right up to the very end.